Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Psilocybin therapy, the trial of the century, and the Doomsday breach, plus this day in history with John Foster Dulles dead. And our song of the day by the Downtown Boys on your Morning Monarchy for May 24th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato for MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome back to another listener-supported blast of independent, non-commercial alternative media. Coming to you, as always, from the Media Monarchy studios up here in Peak, Portland, Oregon. Hopefully you are doing well and safe and sound wherever you are, my friends. We are broadcasting live essentially 9 to 5 a.m. at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Hour of news in the morning live, hour of music in the afternoon live, and you also get some news and some music in between as well. Quite the musical here in the Media Monarchy Kingdom. Huge thanks to all our supporters at MediaMonarchy.com/support. That's got the PayPal, the Patreon, the Bitcoin, the snail mail. If you can give a little, I can give a lot, my friends. And also, of course, a huge thanks to the Truth Seeker app, RadioConfluence.com, and everybody else out there. All the lurkers, all the supporters. People who have been there for a long, long time who don't really speak up all the time. I know you're there, and I appreciate it big time. It is Wednesday. That means food, health, and environment news. We call it hashtag Food World Order. And we've got quite the delicious, nutritious menu. Some things are going to be an acquired taste. Some things you're going to want to spit out in your napkin and not really show anybody you don't like it. Oh, my good God, my friends. I've got quite the menu laid out. And again, everything that we go over on these shows, we tweet out the stories about an hour before showtime. So you can get those. If you're sitting at your desk, if you're able to follow along, all the stories will be right there for you. Let's glance at the breaking lamestream news, as though we don't know there are massive developments going on around the world. You're pretty much looking at martial law in the UK, just as they are in the Philippines as well. The police chief leading the investigation into a suicide bombing that killed 22 people at a Manchester concert said Wednesday that the attacker had not acted alone and authorities were trying to unravel a wider web of plotters. And of course, they always know about the people. They've always got them on the list. And this, to me, is what brings up the fascinating thing between what we call the alternative media. So what I recall through the Audis, all the biggest, loudest voices were all saying, you know, a lot of this Muslim terror thing isn't as real as they want you to believe it is. Yes, the death and destruction is real. But who's doing it and why and for what reasons aren't always clear. Now a decade or so goes by, and those same voices now all seem to be screaming, "We hate Muslims!" And they get White House press credentials, and they get absorbed into the Borg. Meanwhile, those of us who never have fallen for any of that, never called for hate against any kind of people, they know that the people are essentially the pawns. Where'd all that talk go? All that talk seems to have all just kind of vanished and disappeared. But we are in a strange cultural battle. And I'll hit some of that right at the top of this episode as soon as we go through some of the other lamestream news headlines. Pope welcomes Trump at the Vatican despite past disagreements. Everybody pointing out, oh, but Pope Frank looks so much happier with Obama. It's all a show, my friends. All the world's a stage. And video shows stretch of iconic California highway buried after massive landslide. Now, something I mentioned in the headlines yesterday. It's still in the headlines now. I mentioned it to Cassie, and she was like, oh, what, you haven't seen that story? It's been building for days. And maybe it took a few days for it to kind of bubble up to the top of the lamestream news that it is on my front page. Portland burrito shop forced to close amid accusations of cultural appropriation and stealing recipes just a week after Kook's, K-O-O-K-S Burritos in Portland, Oregon was featured in a profile for local publication Willamette Week. Remember, we learned the proper pronunciation of that this week. The pop-up Mexican food cart closed down amid accusations that they ripped off their recipes. Callie Wilgus and Liz L.C. Connolly, the two white women who started Kook's earlier this year, have been accused of stealing their techniques from the tortilla ladies of Puerto Nuevo, Mexico, Old Mexico. Because Connolly told Willamette Week that they gathered their recipes and tortilla-making processes During a holiday road trip to Baja California Village, I picked the brains of every tortilla lady there in the worst broken Spanish ever, and they showed me a little of what they did. They told us the basic ingredients, and we saw them moving and stretching dough similar to how pizza makers do before rolling it out with pins. In the profile, which first ran May 16th, Connolly also claimed that when Mexican cooks wouldn't give up their trade secrets, they were kind of looking in windows, fascinated by how easy they make it look. They used trial and error and tried to recreate it all back here in Portland. They did it in a pop-up truck on Southeast Cesar Chavez Boulevard. You might know it as 38th Avenue. They were open for several months until the Mercury descended on them. The Portland Mercury is the paper that's owned by Seattle's The Stranger. And here's the quote. Here's the phrase that pays, my friends. Because of Portland's underlying racism, the people who rightly own these traditions and cultures that exist are already treated poorly. And the closure of Kook's Burritos is a victory. These appropriating businesses are erasing and exploiting their already marginalized identities for the purpose of profit and praise. This town needs an enema, my friends. Now I know on FriendFace, they're putting together lists of which restaurants you should go to and which ones you should boycott. Because this just in, cooks look at other ways that food gets made. I have it on very good authority from our friend Chef Jake in the chat, who is a chef. Was just made executive chef. Congratulations to him, whether he wants it or not. That's what cooks do. This is the insanity of the phony fake left. And again, this is what's happening. They ate up all the fake right. Now they're coming after their own people. That's why bands are being destroyed. That's why restaurants are being destroyed. And what's going to happen in this idiot town? They're going to be drinking fluoride before long, because that's going to come back as well. And if this town thinks that they're going to be able to fight that battle off as this town has exploded into cultural insanity, they're mistaken. So I thought I'd start off with something a little local and something a little ridiculous. Yeah, it's a victory for all but the employees of that restaurant. Holy moly. Pretty ridiculous. Pretty ridiculous, my friends. And again, the people who are always the first to cry, that's racist, they're obsessed with it. And that's what they're spending their time doing in Portland. Again, the city that hardly works. I think I've told you that before. We had a good friend who's lived in Manhattan for a long time. When she came to visit us, of course, you're waiting in line for restaurants on a Tuesday afternoon for brunch. She said, does anybody work in this town? The answer is no. They're mostly on Oregon Trail food stamps. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato, your host, webmaster, DJ, and so very much more from the mighty MediaMonarchy.com kingdom. One of the other things I wanted to actually tie into the Manchester story is the now very forgotten Times Square story. Oh yeah, remember that? That was last week. A man accused of intentionally... Oh, we didn't know that part. Intentionally mowing down pedestrians on a Times Square sidewalk, killing one, injuring 22 others, indicted today by grand jury. Richard Rojas didn't appear in court in Manhattan for the hearing. The charges have not yet been made public, but the 26-year-old Rojas was previously arrested on charges of murder and attempted murder. An arraignment was set for July 13th, and he doesn't have to enter a plea until then. His lawyer had no comment. Rojas told police after his arrest May 18th that he'd been smoking marijuana laced with PCP. They call that boat. He said he wanted to kill them all, and police should have shot him to stop it. The crash killed an 18-year-old girl from Michigan, injured her sister. Rojas had several prior criminal cases. He pleaded guilty 2 weeks ago to harassment in the Bronx after he was accused of pulling a knife on a notary in his home. You're trying to steal my identity, he said. He also had 2 previous drunken driving cases. I wanted to kill them all. Nobody's talking about that story anymore. So it's really interesting the lengths of which people will go to not call out the crimes that are being committed. And this is the trap that's been set for all of us. Hell, even Morrissey's calling it out. He's getting massive news coverage, as he generally should. And we'll talk about that tomorrow on... No, wait, that's not tomorrow. It's Friday. We'll talk about that Friday on your Morning Monarchy. So let's get into the Food World Order news, my friends. And I front-loaded the episode after all that bad Bad news in the intro. I front-loaded it with some good news today. Thanks to the global activism against government insanity, it now appears that officials in Sherman County, Oregon, are backing off their recent threats to forcibly spray a 2,000-acre organic farm with glyphosate. With all kinds of pro-organics organizations sounding the alarm, Sherman County officials were hit with over 40,000 emails denouncing their insanely destructive intention to spray cancer-causing, soil-destroying poison on a large organic farm. David Cross, not the comedian, director of marketing for Azure Farm, issued the following email. We have some great news to share with you. Tonight we had a very productive meeting with the county commissioner and weed board officials in Morrow, Sherman County, Oregon. David Steltzer's message, recorded moments after the meeting ended: "We'd like to thank our loyal supporters for helping you spread the word and for voicing your concerns about the threat we faced. Sherman County reportedly received over 40,000 emails to date about the matter. You helped open a whole new level of debate about organic farming and about the benefits of clean, healthy food. Thank you. The county commission has now agreed to work with us on a proper weed plan that does not include the use of toxic chemicals. We'd like to thank them for their level-headed approach to working together with Azure Farm. There's still a couple of meetings we will have with the county officials to work out the final implementation of this plan, but we are very optimistic that this will work out in a good way for all concerned. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, David Cross, Director of Marketing." Now, as is noted in this article, and again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes, don't let your guard down. The little Eichmanns will often claim to back down and then turn up the heat after the public outcry has faded. And again, that's exactly what's going to happen with the fluoride fight here in Portland. They're going to sneak it around the back door. And they're not going to notice because the city's filled with all the construction cranes. That's the sign of a healthy city, they like to tell you, right? So that's a little bit of good news here in Oregon. And again, there's Portland, and then there's the entire rest of the state. And Portland likes to think, in a lot of ways, that it is the rest of the state, but it is not, as you will see, oftentimes when the selection ballots are all counted up. The next bit of good news has us traversing all the way across the country to Rhode Island. And that's actually, incidentally, where our song of the day is going to come from at the end of this episode. After reading what the state of Rhode Island is doing about handling and or dealing with geoengineering, everybody may want to move there, I would imagine. However, the other recourse is for everyone to have the same type of bill or legislation introduced into their respective states by numerous members, preferably bipartisan sponsorship of their state legislature. One well-informed Rhode Island state legislator, Representative Justin Price, introduced the Geoengineering Act of 2017, H6011, to be amended on to Title 23 of the general laws titled Health and Safety. The legislative intent of the bill is A, geoengineering is defined herein as the intentional manipulation of the environment involving nuclear, biological, chemical, electromagnetic, and or other physical agent activities that affect changes to the Earth's atmosphere and or surface. B, the Rhode Island General Assembly finds that geoengineering encompasses many technologies and methods involving hazardous activities that can harm human health and safety, the environment, and the economy of the state of Rhode Island. C, it is therefore the intention of the Rhode Island General Assembly to regulate all geoengineering activities as further set forth by the terms and provisions of this chapter. Proposed Section 2323.8-3 of the Geoengineering Act of 2017 defines the scope of geoengineering to include a laundry list of technologies that the public may not even be familiar with. Those technological advances are considered as intentional manipulation of the environment. Is this a wake-up call for everybody? Some of those technologies considered as intentional manipulation of the environment include solar radiation management, SRM, or what some might call chemtrails, which they sing about on the new Gorillaz record. I'm trying to love the new Gorillaz record. It's hard. But on one of the songs I was listening, I was like, did they just say... Yep, they sure did. They're singing about chemtrails. Geoengineering ground-based and or atmosphere-based deployments, including tools and vehicles to deploy them, including drones. Cloud cover protection, cloud whitening, space sunshades or sun shields, solar shields or atmospheric sunscreens, e.g. reflective particulates like sulfur dioxide and aluminum dioxide. Artificial ionosphere, e.g. high-density plasma cloud, ocean fertilization using iron or lime, re-icing or cooling the Arctic by artificial means, genetically modified CO2-eating plastic trees, fake plastic watering cans, carbon black or black carbon releases, atmospheric deployment of radio frequency microwave radiation, and aircraft geoengineering activities. Just to mention a few of the conditions of what's listed in the bill. So that sounds like a great idea going on over in Rhode Island. And this is what's going to happen in a lot of places. There's going to be little small levels of rollback, small levels of pushback, and it's going to happen in smaller communities. It's not going to happen in the big towns and the big cities. They like to say, oh, as California goes, so goes the world. Not in this case, my friends. So that's good news coming out of Rhode Island. And that's when the drugs kicked in. Having a guided psychedelic experience may be powerful treatment for depression, anxiety, and addiction. A new review of clinical trials suggests that psilocybin-assisted therapy has the potential to alleviate a variety of psychiatric disorders. Psilocybin is the primary mind-altering substance in psychedelic magic mushrooms. The drug can profoundly alter the way a person experiences the world. It produces change in mood, sensory perception, time perception, and sense of self. Psilocybin-assisted therapy has been shown to be safe in several studies across a variety of patient populations, explained Keelan Thomas of Touro University, corresponding author of the review article. Generally, psilocybin-assisted therapy involves just a few sessions. Patients receive a dose of psilocybin in a controlled setting while professionals are on hand to provide them with psychological support. The patients also receive counseling before and after each session to prepare them for and integrate their psychedelic experience.
An ordinary hospital in West London. In an ordinary hospital room, something very out of the ordinary is happening. Step by step, it's being transformed into a psychedelic lounge. Over the last 12 months, patients with severe drug-resistant depression have been brought into this room and given a strong and illegal hallucinogenic, psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. In charge of this radical new drug trial is scientist Robin Carhart-Harris. So the room has been transformed from a bog standard hospital room into something a bit more cozy. Why do you do this?
We're trying to provide a setting that is supportive, that's warm, that's nurturing, where the patient can feel safe and supported and free and able to open up, really.
This is one of a number of recent trials reviving some of the most controversial psychiatric research of the 1950s and 60s.
After receiving a small dose of LSD, they're confused and undisciplined.
Around 40,000 patients worldwide were treated with psychedelics for everything from alcoholism to schizophrenia. That all stopped when governments around the world began to ban recreational drugs. Half a century later, and doctors are tentatively picking up this research, with around a dozen trials now worldwide beginning to explore medical uses of psychedelics. Andrew Thayer was one of 20 patients on the trial. He's struggled with depression for 2 decades.
It's hard to describe it, the hopelessness that you feel when you're depressed. I got to a point last November where I'd pretty much given up. I thought, I just can't do this anymore.
He found out about the trial online and applied. To his surprise, he was accepted. That's how, 3 months ago, he found himself in a hospital room in West London, being given a Class A psychedelic drug.
And the environment, it's completely as you want it. So if at any point you just decide that you don't want the music, that's fine, we'll turn it off, or, it's whatever you feel is comfortable.
Ros Watts is a clinical psychologist who helped guide patients through the experience.
I was surprised at the level of his suffering, because when we met him, he was such a charming, kind of so sensitive as well to other people's needs and so great at conversation that it was difficult to see the suffering at first. But we did see it in the dosing days that we realised how much he'd been struggling against.
Dosing days. Those sound like fun. Psilocybin therapy could be significantly better than current psychiatric treatments. That's the name of the article on SciPost. And this post doesn't actually get into the dosage amount. Not really sure. We'd have to dig in and find that. I'm sure it probably refers to, in some level, what they're calling microdosing. Now, can you believe the way those doctors are appropriating the psychedelic experience? They're stealing from shamans. Can you believe that? We should boycott it all, right? Just like you should boycott any music or any art that is influenced by other cultures. That's cultural appropriation. With tongue firmly in cheek, you're listening to The Morning Monarchy. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Wednesdays is Food World Order Day. We call that food, health, and environment news. And we get a lot of news from our buddy Darren over in the UK. He's in Liverpool. And he's near a lot of insanity. And we are in a world where up is down, left is right, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And just as it was said from recent birthday boy Malcolm X, if you're not careful, corporate media will have you hating the victims and loving the oppressors. And it's interesting where we have to get now little nuggets of wisdom. So speaking of nuggets of wisdom, why wouldn't we go to Louis Farrakhan to talk about urban farming?
So today, black people want to know what to do in the inner cities. Look at all the vacant lots. If we took those vacant lots and learned how to turn those lots into plots of land for agriculture, we could begin to feed ourselves in the inner cities. In Cuba, I was blessed to be a guest of Fidel Castro, a wonderful brother. And in the city of Havana, they have tracts of land where people are farming enough to feed the whole population of Havana from the city. What could we do in Chicago? Some brothers and sisters are doing it right now, but we need to amplify that. If you go to Growing Power by Will Allen, I sent, by God's grace, we sent about 14 Muslims to learn from him not only how to farm, but how to create soil. We have a farm in Michigan, and Will Allen came to our little farm, and we were planting navy beans. The University of Michigan didn't think that beans would grow there, but we had a great productive crop. And Mr. Allen said, you know, Minister, we could show you how to make soil. Right now on that land, we have created hundreds of thousands of pounds of soil.
Yeah, you better not listen to any more Louis Farrakhan, because the media narrative in your brain might start to disappear. A name loaded with preconceptions, as is noted in the chat. But there he is, dropping truth bombs, as he is apt to do. Talking about making gardens in cities, as though that's some insane idea. I mean, we tried to start that here in Portland, but they'd say we were just, appropriating that from someone else. Yes, that joke won't get old, at least not through this episode. We now move to what they're calling the trial of the century. And we've mentioned this before in recent weeks, but it is getting close, my friends. The region where the borders of Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, and Nebraska meet is called Sioux Land, like the Indian Sioux. It has been ever since 20th century novelist Frederick Manfred, who wrote the acclaimed Lord Grizzly and 21 other works of fiction, came up with the area moniker. Were he still alive, Manfred would enjoy seeing Elk Point, South Dakota, with less than 2,000 residents, become the stage for Sioux Land's trial of the century, with BPI versus ABC scheduled to go before a South Dakota jury in Union County Courthouse on June 5th. They're going to start doing jury selection on May 31st. If there's not one of those last-minute settlements that lawyers are so good at, Elk Point is going to come for attention it's rarely received. Nestled between the Missouri and the Big Sioux Rivers, Elk Point was nicely looped about 50 years ago by Interstate 29. Other than that, not much has changed. It's a place with a very sort of history that Manfred liked. The Hudson Bay Company set up a trading post there for fur traders as early as 1755. It came to be known as Elk Point because elk were abundant in the rolling prairie between the rivers, not unlike the area less than 200 miles further up the Missouri River near Fort Kiowa, where mountain man Hugh Glass went after being mauled by a grizzly bear. If it does come off, the case of Beef Products International and ABC News will be the biggest trial to ever occur in South Dakota's Union County Courthouse. At least 9 weeks is being set aside for the trial, with as many as 50 lawyers expected to be involved. To say that extraordinary preparations are underway is an understatement. ABC has purchased at least one entire house in Elk Point to convert into office space to be used during the trial. BPI has rented space on Main Street in Elk Point and brought in modular offices. An entire new courtroom has been built into the basement of the existing Union County Courthouse. Previously, the Union County Courthouse only had one courtroom with a maximum occupancy of 70. The first judicial district looked at other options for the new courtroom, including various public schools and event spaces, before opting to rebuild the existing community room space that was in the courthouse basement. It could have taken the trial of the University of South Dakota Law School, which is about 20 miles from Elk Point, but over the Union County line. Earlier in the year, Union County commissioners put $100,000 aside for the courtroom project and are now keeping the trial. It's starting to look like an economic development project. The new space will allow each side to have 16 attorneys in the room at a time, and it can accommodate a total of 132 people. It has carpet for acoustics and custom-made furniture for the clerk, judge, court reporter, and witness stand. BPI and ABC are contributing some electronic equipment, including monitors for jurors and a big screen for the wall. Jury selection scheduled to begin May 31st. A 12-member jury with 4 alternates will be selected. BPI, which is based in Dakota Dunes, South Dakota, adjacent to Sioux City, Iowa, sued ABC News in 2012 for disparaging statements about its lean, finely textured beef, LFTB, that the network repeatedly referred to as pink slime. The Disney-owned network tried unsuccessfully to get the litigation either dismissed or removed to the federal court system. It did succeed in narrowing the list of defendants to ABC and on-air reporter Jim Avila. ABC News anchor Diane Sawyer and others were dismissed from the proceedings. Oh, well, lucky for her. Who's Diane Sawyer married to? She's married to some kind of big wiggy media guy. I forget. It's not coming to me. The trial judge is Cheryl Goering, who's ruled on pretrial motions and seen her rulings upheld by the South Dakota Supreme Court. She's allowed the case to go to jury under common law pertaining to disparagement claims, including those under the Agricultural Foods Products Disparagement Act. Good God. Agricultural Foods Products Disparagement Act. They're working on that here in Portland as well. Against what is certain to be a vigorous defense on First Amendment and free press grounds by ABC, legal observers in South Dakota say BPI is making a case around proving it was the target of a disinfo campaign, including at least 5 parts, like intent to make pink slime a synonym for BPI's lean, finely textured beef project, deception to cause consumers to believe LFTB is neither meat nor beef, but a filler to increase the volume of ground beef, causing consumers to think LFTB is unsafe for human consumption, causing consumers to think LFTB lacks nutritional value, and confusing consumers into perceiving that BPI was involved in improper conduct to obtain USDA approvals. At trial, BPI promises to be more specific about the damages it's seeking. In its original filing, it listed $400 million. Any amount awarded can, under the Disparagement Act, be tripled. That's why most reporters say BPI is seeking $1.2 billion in damages. Before pink slime became a dominant news event in 2011, BPI operated plants in multiple states and delivered LFTB to top fast food chains and the National School Lunch Program. Public reaction caused it to lose numerous contracts and customers, led to plant closures and layoffs, and several hundred workers. Lean, finely textured beef. That sounds so much more delicious than pink slime, right? LFTB Lives Matter. So we're going to see this come up, and it doesn't seem like it's going to disappear. It doesn't seem like it would have gone this far now for this many years to suddenly disappear the last couple of seconds. But we'll see. And we'll keep you updated on that on your Morning Monarchy. I'm James Evan Pilato, your host, webmaster DJ from the mighty MediaMonarchy.com kingdom. And it's at that point that now most of the good news is out of the way. It's all downhill from here, my friends. A botulism outbreak linked to contaminated nacho cheese sauce sold at a Sacramento County gas station has killed a guy and left at least 9 other people hospitalized.
It just changed our family's life so drastically overnight.
The California Department of Public Health is investigating the cases with the help of the FDA. The nacho cheese was sold at Valley Oak Food and Fuel in Walnut Grove and tested positive for the deadly toxin that causes botulism. KCRA3's Natalie Brunell met with the family of a Sacramento woman still battling the illness.
Mother of 3 Lavinia Kelly remains hospitalized in Sacramento a month after developing botulism.
She's able to mouth some words. Her eyes are opening. She's just really frustrated. She's been here a long time and she's in a lot of pain.
Kelly's family says she stopped at Valley Oak Food and Fuel in Walnut Grove April 21st, bought a bag of Doritos, and poured nacho cheese on them.
She said that she started feeling drunk. She couldn't articulate any words.
Within a day, she was on a ventilator, not knowing she was one of 10 botulism cases reported in multiple counties. The outbreak now linked to the nacho cheese sauce sold by the Valley Oak gas station. 1 person has died.
I cried. That could be us.
Shocked, couldn't believe that some cheese could do that.
The California Department of Public Health removed the cheese from the gas station on May 5th. Kelly's family is one of 6 to join a lawsuit being filed against Valley Oak and the nacho cheese manufacturer Gale Foods based in Wisconsin.
From a legal perspective, everyone in the chain of distribution is responsible. The victims didn't do anything wrong.
The CEO of Gale Foods said the company is praying for those battling the illness and issued this statement, quote, "We immediately retested samples from the relevant lot of cheese and it remains clear of any contamination. To ensure the integrity of those test results, we also sent multiple samples to an independent lab which confirmed our findings." Calls to the gas station went unanswered.
I believe there should be consequences. Somebody should, be accountable for it.
But Kelly's sister, who's now taking time off work to care for her family, says pointing the finger isn't their priority.
I just really want my sister to get better. That's our main concern. There's no amount of money that's worth what she's going through.
So there's an episode of The League, which I've quietly mentioned being a fan of, where Nick Kroll, who we've recently reported for you, is actually the son of Jules Kroll of Kroll and Associates, intimately connected to the events of 9/11. Another interesting person in the entertainment industrial complex that somehow has parents that are part of the powers that shouldn't be. There's an episode of The League where Nick Kroll's law firm, which is being headed up by Ray Liotta, have a case about someone getting ill from gas station food. And the defense that they basically craft is, you should know eating garbage at a gas station is going to make you sick, so you kind of get what you deserve. And that's what they move forward with in the case. Now, our friend Embers of Liberty in the chat says, speaking of slime, the World Health Organization spends $200 million a year on travel, far more than it spends on many diseases. And we mentioned the World Health Organization as we head into our next story. It was Yobagoya. Right, it was Yobagoya. That's the food that you should know is going to make you sick, so you get what you deserve if you eat it. We mentioned the World Health Organization to head into our next story. World Health Organization recommended pyroproxyfen is a much more likely cause of the spike in microcephaly cases than the Rockefeller-patented Zika. Report from physicians in the crop sprayed town regarding dengue, Zika, microcephaly, and massive spraying with chemical poisons. This is a new research paper And we're grabbing this from a Spanish language site, which fortunately does have an English report here for us. Its main points are: the dengue epidemic in Brazil persists endemically on an ongoing basis due to the marginalization and misery of millions of people, especially in northeast Brazil. On top of that, the Zika virus, a similar disease, although more benign, is now spreading. A dramatic increase of congenital malformations, especially microcephaly in newborns, was detected and quickly linked to the Zika virus by the Brazilian Ministry of Health. However, they fail to recognize that in the area where most sick persons live, a chemical larvicide producing malformations in mosquitoes has been applied for 18 months, and that this poison, pyroproxyfen, is applied by the state on drinking water used by the affected population. Previous Zika epidemics did not cause birth defects in newborns, despite infecting 75% of the population in those countries. Also, in other countries such as Colombia, there are no records of microcephaly. However, there are plenty of Zika cases. The pyroproxyfen being used, as recommended by the World Health Organization, is manufactured by the Sumitomo Chemical, a Japanese company associated with Monsanto in Latin America for weed control. Brazilian doctors are claiming that the strategy of chemical control is contaminating the environment as well as the people, that it is not decreasing the amount of mosquitoes, and that this strategy is in fact a commercial maneuver from the chemical poisons industry deeply integrated into Latin American ministries of health as well as the World Health Organization. Massive spreading using planes, as the governments are considering, is criminal, useless, and a political maneuver to simulate that actions are taken. The basis of the progress of the disease lies in inequality and poverty, and the best defense are community-based actions. The last strategy deployed in Brazil, and which might be replicated in all other countries, is the use of GM mosquitoes. A total failure, except, of course, for the company supplying those GM mosquitoes. Now, haven't we even talked about in America's Wang, where the governor's wife owns the company that is busting out the mosquitoes? Yeah, pyro, P-Y-R-O, pyroproxyfen. Doesn't that exactly sound like something you want? Now, I saw something on a sidebar, so I thought I'd include it in the show. And it's a long story from the New York Times. The mystery of the wasting house cats. 40 years ago, feline hyperthyroidism was virtually non-existent. Now it's an epidemic, and some scientists think a class of everyday chemicals might be to blame. Environmental toxicants, we are jumping down huge into this article, are equal opportunity hazards. Mercury, asbestos, pesticides, and other compounds can cause health problems in humans and animals alike for at least a century, since coal miners began using caged canaries to alert them to the presence of toxic gases. We've known that we can put these shared vulnerabilities to practical use. Sick animals can be sentinels, warning of looming threats to human health. For household chemicals, cats and dogs, which tend to spend nearly all their time in home and happily hoovering up whatever detritus falls on the floor, may be particularly useful sentinels. Our household pets are exposed to many of the same kinds of chemicals we are. I think if we see a health problem in our animals, especially one that has arisen very recently, genetics don't change that quickly. I think it's kind of raising the canary in the coal mine issue. So the short version is the mystery of the wasting house cat. Spoiler, household chemicals and poisons are not a mystery. We know about them. We just got to stop using them. I'd be happy if I could just get my neighbors to stop using fucking dryer sheets. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy, and we still got some menu items for Food World Order. Kraft Heinz, the deal-hungry food manufacturer that in February gave up on its plan to acquire Unilever, is considering a takeover of Colgate-Palmolive. According to a person claiming to have knowledge of the matter about mergers and acquisitions. Kraft has lined up tens of billions of dollars from multiple banksters to help finance an acquisition of the maker of toothpaste that could value it at up to $90 billion. A takeover of Colgate, which has a current enterprise value of nearly $70 billion, would be the largest M&A transaction this year and transformative for the consumer space. Yeah, transformative. Because one thing that used to be owned by somebody else is going to be owned by a different massive company. Do you know you can make your own toothpaste? It would also be a massive undertaking and a clear shift for the mostly food-focused craft, though not a total surprise to investors given its interest in Unilever and recent comments from management. Of course, this has the usual suspects of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway and 3G Capital. They are massively merging, and I've told you why. Because people have stopped buying their crap. That's why they have to go buy up their competition. And that's why we generally get kind of disappointed when formerly independent organic companies sell out to Unilever. So we stop buying them. That's the list we create. We don't create lists of restaurants that might be culturally appropriating a burrito. We make lists of corporate whores that we don't support. Kind of different. I do remember stocking this back at the old grocery store days. Soy Nut Butter Company. They filed for bankruptcy, citing an E. coli outbreak linked to its I Am Healthy brand peanut butter substitute and manufactured Dixie Doo products as the causes for its financial failure. The Glenview, Illinois Soy Butter Company's president and 90% shareholder Stephen Grubb listed some victims of the E. coli outbreak as creditors with unknown amounts owed to them in the Chapter 7 filing in U.S. bankruptcy court in Illinois. So Soy Nut Butter Company bankrupt because of that massive E. coli outbreak. Dixie Doo products expected to liquidate next. Retailers Target, Amazon, etc. could also be liable. And now we head off to Norway. Unseasonably warm temperatures last fall caused water to breach the entrance to the Arctic's so-called Doomsday seed vault, one of humanity's last hopes after a global catastrophe.
According to a statement last week, unseasonably warm temperatures last fall caused water to breach the entrance to the global seed vault, one of humanity's last hopes in the event of global catastrophe. The so-called Doomsday seed vault, hidden beneath the icy permafrost of Svalbard, midway between Norway and the North Pole, contains more than 500 million seeds from around the globe that could be used to recreate food supplies in case of worldwide agricultural calamity. Hejnisha Ashim, a spokeswoman for the management company Statsbygg, said that seeds were unharmed by the water breach. Ashim went on to say that media headlines citing global warming as the cause of the permafrost melt remain speculation, but that is one of the leading theories scientists are investigating.
So that's, of course, what all the headlines are going to say. Oh, it's because of global warming. Now, I'm just speculating here, but what a perfect event if you built this phony baloney seed vault to save humanity from our ultimate Snowpiercer demise coming soon. What if they built this place to only later just be the straw man to go, oh no, global warming ruined our seed vault, now you're all going to die. Just give us more money and more control, and don't forget to pay your carbon indulgences. Or it could be just that climate and temperatures have always been changing for millions and billions of years, and we've only been watching it for 100. Are humans fucking up the earth? You bet your ass they are. And you want to know who some of the biggest culprits are? Oh, I don't know. Maybe look at the military being rolled out on the streets of UK right now. Maybe ask the dolphins over in the bay, all being blasted by sonar. The state, more specifically its military arm, is the biggest environmental catastrophe to happen to this earth. So if you want to save the planet, maybe stop cheering for the military. Maybe stop cheering for the military to go after Russia or them terrorists. There's a lot of phony choices being given, and they're all being served up on this platter, and people are all just yum, 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 yum. Oh, terrible choices. Give me more, please. Some people haven't even had seconds. I want thirds. And it gets strange with our last couple of stories here, and we'll get to them quick. The Human Genome Project was the most ambitious and sweeping scientific analysis of our DNA ever. Just a reminder, genome is a complete set of instructions of DNA, for DNA, or DNA. The blueprints for building an entire organism. We have our entire human genome laid out before us. 3 billion base pairs total. A, C, G, T. Gattaca, you know. But this article from Big Think gets into human DNA being synthesized within 5 years, so states prominent geneticists. And CRISPR's going to help us as well. And they're going to get rid of all that bad stuff. And we're going to have a new, perfect humanity emerge, right? And then the rest of us that are all sitting here, we're all going to be the weirdos. You know, like I felt when I was at that show the other night. God, I'm the only one that doesn't have a bunch of tattoos and piercings. Now I'm the one different from you. It is on the list to watch. What is it? It's Mr. Nobody. Strange film with the strange Jared Leto about one of the last people who aren't genetically manipulated. Finally, in a rather shocking experiment, Chinese researchers grafted the head of a smaller rat onto a bigger one. While keeping the brain safe from possible damage due to blood loss, their technique could one day be useful for human head transplants. So watch out, head in a jar in the chat. Maybe you'll be the first one. Can be in a jar right next to Nixon. And maybe right next to where they're propping up baseball legend Ted Williams' head, you know, on a tuna can, as we reported for you nearly a decade ago on Media Monarchy. Scientists transplanted a rat's head onto another rat head, hoping to replicate it in humans. That's a pretty perfect way to end your Food World Order episode and setting us up perfectly for Thursday's bizarre Holy Hexes episodes. Again, all those stories that we go over each and every day, Monday through Friday on your Morning Monarchy, they're all going to be tweeted out in advance. So if you're at a desk, if you're at your home office, you can follow the stories as we're going through them. And of course, once the show is posted, everything will be in the show notes, my friends. We usually get the podcast up about an hour after we are off the air, and that heads out through all the feeds and all the other places. We're going to go out with a little bit of punk rock out of Providence, Rhode Island, from a band called Downtown Boys at the end of this episode, coming up in a few minutes. But first, as always, my friends, past is prologue. Let's take a look at this day in history. May 24th, 1830, Mary Had a Little Lamb by Sarah Josepha Hale is published. 1844, a different message was published, and it was called What Hath God Wrought? As Samuel Morse sent that message, a biblical quotation, specifically from Numbers 23:23. That's the book of Numbers. Book 23. No, chapter 23, verse 23. I forget to... I'm forgetting my Bible definitions. Samuel Morse sent that message from the old Supreme Court chamber in the United States Capitol to his assistant, Alfred Vail, in Baltimore, Maryland, to inaugurate the first telegraph line. May 24th, 1856. John Brown, West Virginia hero. There's even a indie band from back there called themselves John Brown's Body. May 24th, 1856, John Brown and his men kill 5 slavery supporters at Potawatomi Creek in Kansas. See, even the good guys kill. May 24th, 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City was opened on this day to traffic after 14 years of construction. Then we jump ahead a couple of generations. May 24th, 1956, the very first Eurovision Song Contest was held in Lugano, Switzerland, and I'm pretty sure there were no bare asses draped in Australian flags wagging it in the face of Ukraine, who shouldn't have won. May 24th, 1958, United Press International is formed through a merger of the United Press and the International News Service, coming just a couple of days after we noted AP being founded on a couple of days ago in history. Now, May 24th, 1959, my friends, after battling cancer for nearly 3 years, former Secretary of State John Foster Dulles dies. Dulles served as Secretary of State from 1953 until shortly before his death in 1959 and was considered one of the primary architects of America's Cold War foreign policy during that period.
This is Movietone. Jeffrey Sumner reporting. For years, while still in office, he fought the gravest of illnesses with great courage. Now, at the age of 71, he has died. Through 6 dangerous years, John Foster Dulles was America's Secretary of State. As President Eisenhower's right-hand man, he formulated foreign policy and carried it out with tireless energy and singleness of purpose. A firm believer in personal contacts and on-the-spot consultation, he flew from capital to capital as one crisis followed another. If the Western Allies were not always in agreement on policy, if Mr. Dulles's attitude often seemed too rigid, nevertheless, it's true that he never spared himself. The pitiless onslaught of disease forced him into hospital and retirement. But even there, as when Mr. Macmillan went to see him with the President, he still remained in close touch with world affairs. History alone can assess his achievement. But one thing is certain, he fought many a staunch battle in the Cold War, and he stuck to his guns.
So to speak, you know, the kind that might take out a sitting president. 0 tears shed for the death of John Foster Dulles on this day, May 24th, back in 1959. We'll get back to this day in history in just a second, but glancing at the chat, so I mentioned Jared Leto, and then the chat starts to talk about Requiem for a Dream, and I was huge into Darren Aronofsky. That was his follow-up to his amazing debut, Pi, and even his third film, was it Sunshine? Is that the title? No. Kingdom? Now I'm forgetting the titles. His first 3 films are fantastic. Now he makes shitty Bible epics with Russell Crowe. Womp womp. Jared Leto is a really interesting one, and I think the documentary about his band, 30 Seconds to Mars, called Artifact, it's about their battle with EMI, is really fascinating. It's a really interesting documentary, one easily worthy of deep focus analysis. So file that away for me, if you would, Media Monarchy stenographers, and we'll get into that. Let's continue to look at this day in history for May 24th, 1961. Freedom Riders are arrested in Jackson, Mississippi for disturbing the peace after disembarking from their bus. May 24th, 1962, American astronaut Scott Carpenter orbits the Earth 3 times in the Aurora 7 space capsule as part of Project Mercury on this day. May 24th, 1976, the Judgment of Paris takes place in France, launching California as a worldwide force in the production of quality wine. May 24th, 1999, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in The Hague, Netherlands, indicts Slobodan Milosevic and 4 others for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Kosovo. You always have to have a good fall guy. And then May 24th, 2014, 3 years ago, at least 3 people killed in a shooting at Brussels' Jewish Museum of Belgium, keeping the phony baloney divide and conquer going. Now, we definitely watch the history notes, and I don't want to spend all my time going, oh, watch out for this date, oh, watch out for that date, because generally speaking, you're not going to be right all the time. But 5/22 makes sense, numerologically, for there to have been an attack. 22s, 11s, 7s, those are generally big numbers. And it was on the anniversary of that machete killing of one of those British soldiers on the street for everyone to see. Occultists love dates. That's why they return to them. Now, digging back on my own website, MediaMonarchy.com, which, if I haven't mentioned recently, has been online since the launch of Media Monarchy back on September 11th, 2005, our very first post we called Electronic Behavior Control System. Maybe one of these days I'll get into actually my original intent in launching Media Monarchy before it kind of became what it is now. How I got the name, the little black stars, all that stuff. We can talk about that sometime in the future. But what I noticed digging back onto the website is that essentially looks like I go on a vacation a decade ago. So this May 24th, 2007 post is the last one for about a week. This day, a decade ago, published to Media Monarchy, Rachel Corrie, An American Conscience. Documentary chronicles her humanitarian work with the International Solidarity Movement in the Gaza Strip just prior to her murder in March 2003. Celebrating birthdays today, May 24th, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, Prince Buster, he's still alive, Tommy Chong, Bob Dylan. That's Robert Zimmerman, celebrating another year of his contract with the devil, perhaps? Pate LaBelle, Priscilla Presley, Jim Broadbent, Alfred Molina, Roseanne Cash, Hector Camacho, no, not our future president, former Puerto Rican boxer. It's also John C. Reilly's birthday, the late great Heavy D, and Rich Robinson. All those folks celebrating birthdays today. And as we think about music, we will wrap up this episode with brand new punk music from a band out of Providence, Rhode Island called Downtown Boys. Their debut LP coming out on Sub Pop up on my birthday, August 11th. We got the first taste. It's called A Wall from Downtown Boys, my friends. As we wrap up your Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy, I appreciate you so much for being here and listening and supporting us at MediaMonarchy.com/support. That is the Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. Again, I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Thanking you so much for listening and reminding you, as always, my friends, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.